my name is Anna Doerner. I played tennis at it's a Division I school within the West Coast Conference. I went to the University of Portland in Oregon. I majored in accounting with a minor in Spanish. I worked in accounting in the public accounting space for a couple of years after graduation in Seattle. Attempted a handful of times to pass the CPA exam, didn't quite work. And then a family reason brought me down to Los Angeles, where I transitioned into insurance. Typically, people either fall into the profession or they have a family member who is in it and lets them know of jobs that are in the profession. So my dad has been in insurance his whole career. He's been on the sales and brokerage side. So he has much more of the direct relationship with the customer, which I'll talk about that whole relationship in a little bit. They'd hired me because I had already had experience in a prior career in accounting. The skills actually translated really well because they're both fairly adverse professions, but in accounting and auditing, you're looking at what could go wrong from a financial perspective. In underwriting, you're looking at what could go wrong from just a general business or person perspective, from a risk management perspective. Been at my current employer for about 6 years now. Did a stint back into that whole general industries, which for us means anything from warehousing to retail to lawyers to brand name companies to the largest plastic bin manufacturer you've never heard of. So it's kind of cool. And LA is such a wonderful place to learn the profession because you are seeing every type of business under the sun. For the last 2.5 years, I've been back in an underwriting role for large accounts. So we're talking, hundreds of millions of dollars of sales, many, many employees, where it's a bit more of a financial transaction where they are taking on it's just a different stickiness to the customer, less transactional and more, they post letter of credit with us. So there's a lot more that goes into underwriting. Underwriting is you're detail oriented, you are client facing, it's an external facing role. You are responsible for your own book. You're, ticking and tying in a way, you're seeing what all the exposures are and what has the customer doing to control those exposures. So it's a cross-disciplinary profession. You're not going as deep into financial statements, more just people exposures. So how could the building burn down, or how could a worker get hurt? Where could a customer slip and fall? Can a person get in, or an employee get in an accident when they're doing delivery? So it's just a transition that you transition your way of thinking. In insurance, it's kind of broken up into two buckets. You have benefits, and then you have P&C, or property and casualty. So property and casualty is your traditional business insurance. So for instance, if you have a restaurant, you're insuring your building, your inventory, your workers, your customers in a way. If they slip and fall within your restaurant, there's liability coverage for that. If you're doing deliveries, it's your autos. So property casualty. So I am in a hybrid sales underwriting role. So I have a book of business that I'm responsible for. You're assigned a book of agents and brokers that I handle, and existing customers. So I handle my whole territory is like Southern California. So I have clients and customers down in San Diego. I have some up in San Francisco. And now have some in Arizona. So my role is basically the quarterback of an account. So these larger accounts have a lot more, I don't want to say sophistication, or they just have a lot more moving parts to them. I'm responsible as the liaison between the broker and the company. So meaning our claims service organization and then our risk engineering organization. So we have people within the company who actually go out and assess, hey, do they have good controls in place? And then we have people within the organization who take claims and they pay claims. So I'm responsible for that intermediary relationship. So I'm also responsible. So that's existing customers. I'm also responsible for bringing in new customers. So I go out and sell the company difference to my book of agents and brokers, and say, hey, here's what we're doing on workers' compensation right now. Here's this new data set that we've been able to gather. Here's how we can help within your particular industry, within your customer's industry, how we can help them save some money and have a better risk management program. So it's a sales role, but it's warm calls rather than cold calls. So I'm not going out and soliciting random CFOs or seat controllers or um, uh, HR directors to say, hey, well, my name's Anna. I want to be your insurance broker. So it's you're one step removed where, yeah, you're responsible for your sales goals, but you're, I guess, that quarterback. So it is requires a leadership position because you're actually leading more within the internal organization. Not at all. No, you can. Some people go into claims and that's their whole career. Some people start in claims and go into underwriting. I mean, it's the wonderful part about the industry is you don't really need to have any prior experience as you're starting out. It's not totally necessary. There's a lot of people in claims organizations that have law backgrounds because you are looking at state regulation, interpreting policies. So there's a lot of reading that happens, and you're also having to be the world's most patient person because claims adjusters are often taking people on their worst days. There's an accident that happens and they're calling and saying, hey, I need to be compensated for this. So I commend people who end up going into claims because it's certainly not easy. It completely depends. So again, the insurance industry, you could be in an operations role, it's a 9 to 5 job, or you could be in a sales role and it's, you're living and breathing it depending on what you want your sales concepts to be like. For me, it is anywhere from a 40-hour a week to a 60-hour. I don't really have as many 60-hour weeks anymore. We have our busy seasons around quarter end, where business renews all around the same time, or you have a bunch of new customers coming in. So just all depends. You can make it really the beauty of it is you can craft it for as busy or as light as you want, just depending on how intensely you want to compete. The bigger the organization, probably the longer hours you're going to work. If you want to own your own business, you can own your own brokerage. You know, you want to work and as an account manager 9 to 5. So it all just it's pretty fluid. It's a vast industry. So you get quite a lot there's a lot of different things that can be done. Operations would be the servicing component of it. So I'll speak to the carrier side. And I think that it mirrors a little bit on the broker side. So the operations would be, so I bring as the underwriter, I bring in an account. So my team is then going to work on the policy processing, certificate issuance, any endorsements that need to be processed. So they're working in a, I don't want to say backroom because they still interact. They'll still have direct contact with the broker and sometimes the customer, but they're just doing more of the back end policy processing. So those kinds of roles are ones that are typically, they've gone more or less fully remote. And so people, billing coordinators, you have policy auditors, account managers. Broker, uh, the brokers and agents are the ones that have the direct relationship with the customer. So pretend you have a large restaurant operation. You would typically have an insurance broker who would be responsible for maybe your relationship to making sure all your buildings have the proper insurance coverage in place. The broker would be responsible for placing, making sure all your workers are covered and appropriately have the appropriate insurance in place. They would want to make sure that your auto fleet is all covered just in case of an accident. So the broker is the primary conduit between the end customer and the carrier. So I'm on the carrier side. So the brokers are the ones that are much more in the full-on sales role, where oftentimes they're getting paid commission. They're the hunters, and so they're going to say, "Hey, restaurant conglomerate owner, I can save you a bunch of money. This carrier specializes in restaurants. Why don't you let me take a look at your policies and we'll go from there. And it's such a relationship driven business. I mean, we have some customers who the owner of the business is the brother of our broker. So it's a familial business, it's a friendship based business, or I golf with my customer and that's how we've established a relationship. So it's a bit old school when it comes to that, where um, I think people have still been successful cold calling. You meet through LinkedIn, you meet in different groups. So they're much more on the customer facing side. The carriers are the ones who have the pen. So the carriers are the ones who basically determine, okay, so broker has submitted me this group of restaurants. I'm going to take a look at whether I believe my company can tolerate taking on all this risk. So the customer is going to say, hey, all of my buildings are up to fire code. They are well constructed. We take really good care of them. They're not dirty. Like we have great maintenance routines, so it's not going to burn down. From an employee standpoint, we pay our employees well. We provide them with benefits. We give them appropriate training. We give them appropriate gloves so they don't cut themselves. We train them how to lift heavy things. So that's that's the risk assessment that we go through in order to say, hey, this is a great enterprise. We believe that their risk management techniques are such in place that we are going to quote it at this particular price. So that's what the carrier does. The carrier holds the pen, and ultimately the ones who pay the money out. So if an employee cuts themselves, then we would be the ones ultimately responsible for cutting the check to make sure that employee is made whole. So it's going to be paying their medical bills, it's going to be paying their downtime. So that's where the claims organization comes in. The way thing I like to say is if you ever read any large judgment, for instance, Roundup, and that's public information, I think there was a $4 billion payout. These large, or if there's a product recall, say there's a food recall or baby products sometimes get recalled. Insurance is the ultimate end payout. So that insurance companies are paying out because they're insuring against that risk. So, Roundup would have had many policies to insure against bodily injury from, you can never, and that's where things go into, then they go into the courts, they go into arbitration, they go into jury trials. So that's where, but insurance companies are ultimately the ones who pay these out. So if you see in the news things like that happening, big earthquakes, September 11th, I think they just maybe in the last 3 or 4 years had their final payout. So things like that can take decades of litigation to come to fruition. But I want to say it's cool because you're always, it's sort of you kind of sometimes think in morbid ways, like when people can, how can someone get injured? How can a building burn down? What are bad things that can happen? Insurance is there to make sure people are made whole again and businesses are made whole. Organization, I would say, is number one. I have a lot of independence with how I manage my book. So being able to be self-sufficient is really important. With I mentioning being the quarterback of the account, I am constantly soliciting emails and phone calls from my internal partners, so claims and risk engineering. I am soliciting help or questions or new submissions or renewal submissions from my external trading partners. So it's organization is key. So I live and die by my calendar, put everything, any reminders I have, meetings that come up. I really like to organize my week via my calendar. I have this written down. Teamwork is huge. I would say communication would be number one. Sometimes when I first started, like, and even now, to be able to, all the broker wants is a response, because I guess they oftentimes will get carriers or people who just don't respond. So the more you actually the basic things, calling them back, emailing them back within 24, 48 hours goes a long way. So it's pretty amazing how simple it can be to be successful. Not everyone does it. Let's see, problem solving, risk tolerance. I had a broker make a really great comment to say you have a ocean wide of knowledge you have to learn, but only a foot deep. So you're not necessarily, there's actuaries, which people go to school for that. You're learning statistics and risk modeling, and that's not something I can really speak to. But for the rest of us who are selling this and working in this, you learn so much about many, many different businesses, which is the coolest part of this work, is that I could be working on a restaurant one day and I could be working on a waste hauler the next day. And so you're learning about all these industries, which is super cool. Yeah, a lot of companies are starting to have more robust training programs because they know that they have to train the next generation that's coming in. So yes, you work for the right company, you're going to learn it, and it's also a lot of on-the-job training. So you're going to learn from your superiors, you're going to learn from your coworkers who have been in the industry for 25, 30 years. I have a wonderful team that I work with who have just taught me so much just by them being voluntary mentors or listening and hearing their cadence, listening, having them tag along with me in sales calls, just having that comfort of having that help within the organization has been probably the best learning experience. You can also get designations. For instance, I have my certified property casualty underwriter designation. So it's a series of, I think, 12 or 13 tests that you take in all different components of property and casualty underwriting. So you learn, how do you do earthquake insurance, flood insurance, what is workers' compensation, what is cyber insurance? I mean, that's a big thing that's really just exploded right now. So yeah, so it covers, if you can think about it for students, if they're learning business, you're really diving into every component of that business, um, which is neat because you're learning about different industries. I think you need to have a bit of patience as well because for me at least, there's a lot that is out of my control, and because I am not the direct seller to the customer, and the customer also has multiple vendors they're working with, so they could just decide, hey, I really like this competitor of ours, and like, okay, well, I used to get really frustrated when I didn't win, and now I just move on to the next one. So I think the thing with sports is, and I've said this in other commentary before, is you learn how to win from collegiate athletics, but you also learn how to take losses. And I think, and I use that like when I'm interviewing too, for new jobs or whatnot, is learning, knowing, understanding how to lose and how you take that graciously is really important, because you can be the best competitor, the most winning competitor, but how do you handle your losses? Do you pick yourself up and move on from it, or do you wallow in it and have yourself a pity party? And does that affect your coworkers too? And that's huge. Just like you build a relationship with your teammates, you build a relationship with your coach. You can't choose your teammates, you can't choose your coach, but how do you build that working and professional relationship with them in order to achieve wins and to represent the school appropriately? And so that's what we do. Is if I don't win one, I just know that I'm going to put it in Salesforce and I'm going to talk to the broker next year, because the time goes really fast, and before you know it, it's renewal time. And I've just maintained a level of professionalism with my brokers and agents, and they see that. It's not every, you actually be surprised at how you can separate yourself pretty easily, but just by being communicative and diligent, persistent. You have a natural propensity to deal with the team. So you're working with a group of people within your organization. I think people don't realize that transitioning to an office environment is not a strong skill set everyone has. But if you've already have experience working on a team, I think the same goes for military veterans, right? You're working with a group of people that you haven't necessarily chosen to be with, but you have to work together to achieve a common goal. And I would say just the skills around um, the discipline component of it are huge. To be able to get up, you're getting up every day, you're showing up on time. But when it comes to getting in the working world, athletes already have this leg up in a way because they've had to get up for 6 a.m. workouts, or they've had to, you know, play on an injury, or have had to deal with soreness or losses or and wins too. There's not difficult to find any risk management programs. And as I mentioned earlier, I think before you started recording, is that you can, there's a couple colleges that offer risk management degrees. So, but I'm likely to, this is to people who have already graduated, have already had their degrees. So I have coworkers who got political science degrees. I have coworkers who got math degrees. Communications. I mean, there's a vast. I mean, even I have some coworkers who didn't even finish college. So it's an industry that, I don't want to say the barriers to entry. It's a more level playing field with where there's many ins to it. So there is no direct path. You can start being a claims adjuster for personal lines. I mean, there are a lot of jobs out there and companies looking to hire new talent. There are for those math majors out there, for those in the more technical side of things, they're risk engineering. So those are the people, or loss, they call them loss control in some various roles. But they're the ones who actually go to the customer and saying, they're measuring the building, they're looking at the equipment that the employees are using, they're actually going in and into the nuts and bolts of it and assessing whether it's what they're saying on paper is what is actually taking place. So that's a really cool role. And then there's the sales side of things, which is more for me, you're dressing up, you're going into an office environment, you're doing sales presentations. So it's much more behind the scenes, or not behind the scenes, more client facing. You're engaging more with the CFOs, with the chief HR director, the controllers, the owners of the company. So yeah, again, there's no direct, and then I think a lot more athletes have a tendency to go into the brokerage or the sales side of things, just because that's a very natural transition, because they have those relationships, or they have that alumnus that they just graduated from, so they have this vast network of uh, alumni that they can tap into who are business owners and can get them slotted into a good job. So it's not as, I don't have as many carrier coworkers who were former athletes. It's again a lot of like the brokerage side, because that natural sales fit I think is there. Oh, it happens all the time. Yep. Where you have carrier, if you worked at a carrier, then you go to work at a similar role at a broker, and vice versa, where, people just for various reasons make the swap. And there's also niche industries that people specialize in. So there's some brokers who only do cyber liability. There's some brokers who only do personal lines, only do entertainment. So while it's not, for the industry as a whole, is not sexy or glamorous, there's some pretty cool niches that people can get into. And then you become, once you specialize, you become a hot commodity. Then you become the go-to person. So whether you're in an external, like the sales role, then more customers would come to you because that's your specialization. On the carrier side, from a hiring standpoint, companies want to hire you because of your specialization. So typically, how I got into it again was just from my family member who said, here is this job. I knew nothing about the insurance profession. Even when growing up, I didn't even know really what my dad did. I mean, the industry is actually very mature, and there's a lot of retirements we're already seeing some transitions within the industry where there's this great knowledge in these large books that are transitioning, and there's no one there to take it. There's a huge gap between, there's some younger people coming into it, but there's going to be a big retirement gap that takes place. So it's ripe for new entrants into the industry. There's actually a lot of really cool innovation going on in insurtech, and there's disruptors. The company Lemonade is certainly a disruptor, and they went public 7 months ago. So that's a disruptor within the industry, and there's lots of innovation going on. So I think insurance is the next industry that's right for change. And so it's good to see that, because right now what we're doing is a lot of these more traditional policies haven't changed for many years. There are many opportunities. I mean, there's some lines of insurance that I haven't even mentioned. It's just, if you think of every component of someone's life, whether it's your own personal life, you have your health. I didn't even talk about health insurance. So there's companies that do all of that. There's group benefits. There's yeah, there's a lot within the industry, and I think, as I mentioned earlier, the disruptions, the insure tech. So being able to have, with our shared economy, there's new ideas popping up in that regard with younger people. But as far as these traditional books, brokers and agents are looking to transition their books to someone that they know and trust for handling. And an athlete is a perfect person to think about that, because there is there's that discipline, there's that teamwork, there's that communication, that ownership, accountability. I think ownership and accountability are huge, because that person who is looking to retire, is looking to entrust their knowledge and their relationships on someone up and coming. So I guess that's just an example of how the industry is maturing. So I think it's a great time to get in. There's a lot of money in it too. It's everywhere. It's necessary. Like you said, it's not going away. It's that necessary evil, how you want to look at it. I think it would be a challenge. I mean, I suppose you could probably just do a part-time. I mean, I think there are part-time roles. It's intensive enough that you would want to make it your full-time thing. I think there are some insurance, particular brokers and agents who have, like, if they're getting paid pure commission, it doesn't matter really what they're doing. If they want to have a whole side business, that's up to them. From my standpoint, it would be really difficult to have a sporting career and do my day job. And it's dynamic enough, because for me, every week is different. Every day is different. Pre-COVID, I was out and about a lot more than now. I'm obviously behind a computer, but yeah, that's the refreshing part of it, is that you don't feel too stagnant. The best part of my job is going on site visits with my customers. So I have been able to see a microchip manufacturer where you have to sign an NDA to go in to visit their tour. So you're seeing their clean rooms. I've been able to go on a ride along at the local dump here at a transfer station, right in the truck, and see these dump trucks coming in and just at the landfill. That was really cool. I've been able to go into, like, a high-end clothing manufacturer and see how they do their business. Some really well-known restaurants around here we have as customers, and so I've been able to go and get a tour. And so being able to have the inside information of how these businesses are done, I think, is my favorite part of it. There's still a lot that the insurance industry can offer, and it's a great place to work. You can have if you want a good work-life balance, you can have it. If you want to just dive into it and make a ton of money, you can also do that. I mean, there's just, especially on the sales side, there's a lot of times no limit to the amount of money you can make. So if you studied political science, if you were inclined towards law school, claims is also a potential organization, because in claims management too, you're really not necessarily taking direct claims handling, but the people I've worked with that are higher up in the claims organization all have law degrees. So really, just if you can find your niche and your interest in this industry.